So hello everyone, I'm Harshit from Lovely Professional University Phagwara, and today we will be covering the topic of exception handling, and after that exception handling we will be doing the file handling part also. So before that, in the previous lecture I have taught you guys strings, all concepts of string which are which need to be there, every function, every operator in strings, how can we use them. And before that lecture I have already uploaded a lecture for functions, so please guys understand those functions, how the functions are actually working and how everything works. So let's just move towards our exception handling, but before that let's just do one practice problem from functions. Let's just create a function that actually checks if the email ID given from the user is actually valid or not. So what's the what's the major thing in an email ID that says that it's valid or not? That everything must be lower and everything must be lowercase and everything it must be a combination of numbers and alphabet. So let's just write a function def email, and in this we'll give it a parameter a, so that I'll write if a dot is lower, a dot is lower, okay, in bracket. Then after this we will check if a is alpha number. Okay, if is alpha. Okay, then we have print your is correct. Otherwise we will write an else block right here which will print value. Okay, and now as soon as I just go outside this function, and as soon as I'm calling this function out, so it will just work like this. I create a variable L equals to string substring add substance 1 2 3 add the rate email dot. Okay, now as soon as I just call this function email bracket to and have my output name is so the name of system one reason and what you can say that okay, we just check it. Let me just check this one out. Okay. So before this concept, I'll have to teach you how can we import modules and what are modules. So we will just do them in the next lecture or in, in this lecture in the upcoming part of it. So for now, I'm going to be teaching you exception handling. So in our exception handling, what's actually happening is every syntax error or every runtime error we are getting. That's that's where this exception handling actually is working. Okay, so there are two kinds of error in Python. So whenever we are writing the wrong code or whenever we are writing something wrong in that code, it actually categorizes itself into two different parts. One is the syntax error part in which it's a bad code structure caught which is caught before the program even runs. That is such as missing colon, mismatched brackets or anything like that. And the second part it falls itself into is exceptions. Okay. So what's happening in the exception part is the code is synthetically fine, but synthetically it's fine. But something goes wrong while running. For example, dividing by zero or opening a file that doesn't exist or converting a string into an integer. So this is where our this is where our exception handling actually works. So guys, exception handling is about the second kind catching runtime errors. So our program doesn't crash and can respond gracefully. So there is our first concept from this lecture. In this lecture, it's our first concept, which is just basic try and accept. Okay, there are two keywords, try and accept. Okay, so in those keywords, we can actually name our own syntaxes, name our own syntax errors, not syntaxes, our own syntax errors. So let me just give you an example of the first exception handling is the zero division error case. You know what's happening in the zero division error cases? Let me just tell you. Whenever I'm taking two numbers from the input, a is equal to int input num num1 okay, input to int input num1 and then there is that input to and after that it's is equal to int input num2 okay. And then after this we will perform some division okay. So I can write c is equal to a divided by b and then print c okay. So now what's happening here is when I'm entering my num1 as 4, when num2 is 2, I get my output as 2.0. Okay, but now what's happening here is we are actually dividing these two things. But what if I put my num1 as 0 and num2 as I will get 0, comma 0 because anything divides which divides 0 is 0. But you know if I'll put any digit at the numerator and now I'll put 0 denominator, it will give me an error, 0 division error, division by 0. Okay. So this 0 division error which we can see right here, this is what our zero division error is. Okay. So it's our first case of our exception handling. So to counter this step, we can actually do one thing. Okay. We can actually write a try and an except block. So I'll write try and I'll put a column right here. Okay. And now as soon as I'll take anything out here and put them in a try block. Okay. So whenever I'm putting everything in my try block, now I'm saying my code that try this. Okay. If this is successful, execute it. Except I'm saying except. Now I have written the except block as well. That except block is what which we are actually, we can actually manipulate our output when we are getting an error. So I just write except here, and then I'll write, you know, in this moment we are actually working with the case sensitive language. So we have to actually sensitive all the cases. So the zero here is in capital, I have tried in capital. Okay. So I've written zero division error right here. Okay, now after this, what I'll actually have to print is I can print. So the user will not get this syntax error right here. The code will not crash, but I can print cannot divide by G. And after this, when I'm running my code, the number will be 5. Number will be 2. I'll get my output as cannot divide by 2. We can actually see the exception handling in our mobile phones also. Whenever we are whenever we are doing any sums in our calculator, we can actually take it. So let me just do one thing. I'll do the same thing. I'll just divide 5 divided by 0, and as soon as I click the equals sign, I'll get my output. So here I've written 5, as you guys can see. Let me just see. Oh, only sorry. I haven't made this everything done. This is what we are trying to learn. Okay. But before that, let me just show you a real time exception handling. Okay. A real time exception, what we are doing in real time. So okay, so right now I have written 5 in my calculator. Okay. Now after this 5, as soon as I put the division and then 0, and as soon as I'll put the equal to sign, I'll get a message cannot divide it by 0. Okay. So this equals, then this thing is which is falling under the which is falling under the exception handling. Okay. So I'm sorry, I haven't converted my camera to that corner. So let me just teach you technique. See, at first what was happening is, let me just still, let me just show you that part of it. Okay. So at first what's happening right here is that you guys will believe that from where this try and exception. Let me just tell you. Let me just see. This is our first block of code. Okay. This was my first block of code. Okay. As soon as I'll run this code, I'll get my I'll get my first number. So I'll enter my first number as 5. Second number I'll put my second number as 2. So I'll get my output 2.5. So it's basic division. But now when I'm putting my first number as any number and my second number as 0, I'll get an syntax error or a zero division error. This is our case, okay, zero division error case. It says division by zero division error. 2. So now what's happening here is my code just crashed. Okay. So now what's happening here is that a number which is divisible, which cannot be, a number cannot be divisible by 0, whereas it's not following the fundamentals of the mathematics. So that's why we got this zero division error right here in our computer system. Okay. This syntax error, this traceback notation called file main py line level in module zero division error. This line zero division error division by 0, it's written in our except block. There are two blocks. First is try block, second is except block. Okay. So now as soon as I'll just show you like this, I have written the same code in here, but now I have written the code in this try block. What this try block says is that try if the code works, this code works perfectly. But if this code gives you an error, and that error is written in the exception part, except block, so you can actually manipulate the output of the system. Okay. So that's why I have written cannot divide by 0. So here I have got a whole syntax error, whole zero division error right here, and this made my code crash. But as soon as I just now I have written a except block right here. So if I just enter 0, I'll get a simple answer, code divided by 0. And my code actually executes. So this exception handling actually helps me to protect my code from crashing. Okay. So this is what's happening here. So no. Now let me just tell you what's the anatomy of this. So anatomy is that in this Python interpreter actually runs the try block, okay, line by line. Then the moment the line raises a zero division error, okay, it will immediately jumps to the matching except block. Okay, the rest of try is actually skipped right now. So as soon as it is reached here in C, it will give it a zero division error. So it will now check if there is any except block for zero division error. We have given the except block for the zero division error. So now it will not print C now. It will exit the try block and now it will move towards our except block. Now it will execute the except block. So that's why we have actually written the except block. So see, if there are no errors occurs, okay, then except block is actually skipped. Okay. So now we can actually catch more than one type of exceptions. Okay, so our first type of exception is zero division error in this. Okay, there can be another exception which we have seen in our first, which is syntax error. I have made so many mistakes for that error in this series also. That is value error. Right? When I'm writing except value error. Okay, and now as soon as I just put this, now I can write print value should be or int. Okay. Now this is my second type of error. Second error which I can actually create in this. I'll just write a here and it will say that value should be of int. Okay. Int right here it's a greater type. Okay. So so that's why we are getting this error. Now if I just write 5 right here and then I'll write this right here. So it will again read that value should be of int. So that's my value error. Right? I'm actually manipulating the output of my errors. That's where our exception handling actually comes. Okay. Now there is another block of code. Okay. There is another exception which is exception as in. When we are actually doing something on our web pages on any web page, there is this error except exception. Okay. So this exception as in. What's what's this? We get an we get a statement which says something got wrong. Wait, it will not tell you that what has gone wrong. It will just say something got wrong. So if I just try 45 right here, 0 right here, I'll get my 0 division error. Sorry. Now if I'll write any gibberish right here, it will say value should be of int. And then there is third law which will work when both of those errors will not be working. Then it will be saying that exception error as okay. So this is how we are actually okay, let me just tell you that how that exception error that I see cannot be. So I will now enter it. Syntax error bracket was not closed. So we are actually manipulating this statement right here. This last statement which is right here, we are actually manipulating this statement. That's why our exception handling actually is very very mandatory for most of the web pages. So that users, so the whole web page code cannot be crashed by one wrong input of the user. Okay. Now, let's just check, let's just see what's the anatomy of this code right here. Here, Python checks the except block top to bottom, and then it runs. it runs the first matching one. Okay, so except exception is a catch, all put it last. Okay, so since a generic handler is placed earlier, it would swallow everything about it. Okay, so now this exception block, it will just go line by line. If any of these two will actually be connected, this block will not be executed. But now if I just move this one block, okay, the up in up, okay, right here, giving this ingredient. Okay, now if I run it, I can actually get my error supplement. So it will actually check it line by line. It will check it in series. As this except block executes, the zero division error didn't even execute it because if one except block gets executed, every other except block, every try block will be ignored by the system. So that's why we are actually using this. That's why we have written something else wrong, something else went wrong at the last because before that there will be multiple errors. Now, there is another concept, the else block. Our syllabus actually explicitly names this. Okay, so it's the part of is the part that these students are actually forgetting. Okay, so there is one else block also. So if I'll just try, if I'll just move this at the bottom line. Okay, now there can be one more thing. Inside these except blocks. Okay, I can actually write else tray is division success. And as soon as I just do it like this, and while it keeps the except value, now if I just use my code right, if I just comment it all out, I'll get my num1 as 4, num2 as 5, and I'll get 0.8 division success. Okay? And if previously be saying that what if will get an will create an error 4 then 0. Then that division success statement will actually not execute. So what's happening here is it's actually similarly working with an if else block. Okay. Now see, let's just understand the anatomy of else block right here. That else block actually runs only if no exception occurred, okay, in the try block. Okay. It's useful for the code that can run only on success. So it's keeping it separate from the risky code in try. Okay. So now there is last last concept, not the last concept, but it's also a major concept, but it's not in the syllabus, but we have but it will worth working with it. Okay, so that concept is the finally code, the finally one. Okay, see now we have understood two two keywords, try and accept. Okay, but there is one mode which is known as finally. This finally keyword will actually run always whenever we are at, even if we are getting our code wrong or even we are getting our code correct. So I'll write finally keyword, okay, and then I'll just do nothing. Finally, and then I can write print. Okay, now as soon as I'll enter it, even if I'm getting an error right there, okay, it will give me compilation successful error. This code execution successful thing right here, which is this, okay, this thing will be written in the finally block code, okay. So that's how we are using the finally part also right here. Now let's just let's just understand let's just understand our analogy with a flow chart. Okay, so let me just show you that. Now let me just show you the flow chart right. Okay, it is not showing it up right here. So I'll just add that flow chart in my description, guys. Please actually see that part. You know, now there is another error which is file not found errors. We will actually cover these errors when we are doing the file handling part. So okay, and after this there are some errors which we need to remember. Okay, first one is zero division error whenever we are doing the division, and then there is a value error. Okay, after that value error there is a type error right there. Then there is index error and there is a name error. These are most common errors which we need to understand, which we need to actually keep them in our mind. So some questions for you guys is that first question is that create a code that catches the zero division error and value error separately, and then another code is that you guys have to print the result in else block if no error occurs, and then print done by print done in a finally block that regardless whatever happens. Okay, now let's just move towards our file handling. Okay, guys. So what's happening in file handling is that in Python, there are multiple types of files. Okay, let me just start with that. But before that, we will understand that what are files. Files are actually a collection of data or alphabets. Okay, so files are actually collection of data, and this file handling is actually how we are handling the files in our Python. Okay, so in Python, our first type of file is there are first of all there are two types of files, binary and normal. Okay, we will be with those two files there are actually many operations which we are doing. Okay, so before that our first thing which we will understand that how can we open a file, how can we actually close it. Okay, so for opening a file there is a keyword open. Okay, and we all know that every file it has its own code. Okay, that means if I look every file, for example each.txt. This .txt shows that this file is actually a text file, and after this text file that we are actually working with on, so there is this text file which is right there. If I just write exe, it shows that it's a exe type of file. So the these are some files which are in our Python. Okay, now for these type of files, there will be one open command. Okay, that will open our file. First one is our open. So whenever we are opening a file, we have to actually write we have to actually write any variable f equals to okay open in bracket, then inside the columns there will be this file name. So I am taking the file name node.txt. Okay, and after that txt part there will be a type in which mode you are going to open that file. Whenever you are working in the MS Word or MS Edge, there is this option of voting, reading, writing, or commenting. Okay, so that's where this file handling actually works. So our first option is the read mode. We will be we will be showing the read mode with this R word. Okay, this R shows the read mode in that file. Okay, so this is the syntax of opening a file in our reading mode. See, what's the difference between read mode? Okay, so read mode is actually a default mode, and it gives us an error if the file actually does not exist. Okay, now after this read mode, there is also a write mode in that file. So how can we actually open that file in write mode? the syntax is changes R to W. Now the file will be opened in the write mode. Okay, so what write is doing? Write is actually writing in a file, opening a file and opens it in the write mode so that we can actually write inside that. Otherwise, if the file is not present in any dictionary or any directory, it will actually create that file if it's missing. Okay, then there is another mode known as append mode. Okay, so there is this append mode. For that append mode, the code is same syntax, just change that W to A. Now, what's happening is at this append mode is this append mode actually adds adds anything to the end without erasing existing content. When we are writing in a file, we can actually erase all the content. Okay, but in this append mode, it will actually add everything at the end without erasing any existing content. Okay, now there is this create mode also. For that create mode, we will be working with that X. This X will actually open. Actually, it actually creates the file. So if the file is already created, it will actually return an error. So that's why this is X create mode. Then there is one more mode which is read and write both. In which we can read and write both. So that is our R plus mode. Okay, in this R plus mode, that R shows the read and the plus sign shows the write part also. That you can read in this file, you can actually write this file, right inside that file also. Now, there are another type of files which are in binary mode. So, we can actually read write in that binary files also. So, that read write file binary mode is in which there will be a B added at the end of everything. Okay, RB will be read binary, WB will be write binary, and then AB will be append binary. Okay, so there are these files. Okay, now there is how can we read file. Okay, so whenever we are reading files, okay, whenever we are reading files, there are three methods for which we can read files. First one is read method. Okay, so in that read part, I'll just open this file in the read mode. Okay, and then I'll open it as file. Okay, now as I've opened it as file, I can actually put a column right here, and now I'll create a variable content equal to file dot read. Okay, now as soon as I'll write this file dot read right here, it will now actually read every whole file as a string. Okay, now what's happening here is the whole file is actually being read by the compiler or by the interpreter as string. Okay, then after this there is another mode which is read line. So when I just want my interpreter to read only one single line. I'll write read line. Okay. This will actually what this will actually do is it will actually read only the first line of our file. Okay. Then there is read lines also right there. When we are talking about read lines, it will actually read multiple lines and it will actually read every line as a list. Okay. Then there is this strip. There is one line dot strip. Okay, what this line dot strip actually do is it's very memory efficient, and it actually goes line by line. So this strip removes every slash and character. Slash and is new line character. Okay, so it actually helps us removing the new line character. For large lines, we will be using the loops because it's best and it doesn't load the whole file into the memory at first. So that's why we are actually using the read. These are some modes of reading. Okay, then there are there is writing in file. Okay, so for writing in a file, I can actually write file dot write. Okay, and inside that file dot write. Okay, I can just write this and then whatever I want to write. If I want to write hello world, I'll in my file this will be written. Okay, so this is a file handling. I cannot actually execute these codes because for them I have to create another directory in my computer system, and then after that it will gain access to that directory or that particular file, so that I cannot execute these codes right now. So if you guys want to execute these codes, you guys can actually go on Python shell or the VS code or any code like that, any compiler or code like that. Okay. So now after this, there is this write line which actually removes all the data which is inside that file and it will actually write on it. But there is append mode also. Okay. So for appending mode, we are actually writing that file as we will write file dot write. Okay. It's for writing. Then there is for append. We will write the append keyword so that this hello world will be written at the end. So that's how we are actually appending in the file also. Now from here we will start to handle errors. Okay. Now there will be errors such as file not found, which is our most common error, which on which we have seen the many memes out there. Error 404 file not found. That's also a part of part of those errors. Okay. So whenever I'm writing this, okay, if I if I'll have to write all this code inside this, and now if I'll enter it now, and I'll put a try block, okay, try, I've written a try block right here, and then I'll write a except file not found, okay, I'll write the file not found error, okay, I'll write the file not found error, and I can just write print error 404 file not found. This error 404 is also known as but test case, okay, this test case, it actually falls into the category of test case. You guys will be learning it when you guys will be doing the software engineering. There will be a whole topic covering these test cases, like how a test case, if the test case successfully executes, what's the output, and if that fails, then what's the output of that. It's actually the name of the test. It's actually test case ID error 404. Now if I enter it, see it is given me invalid syntax. Yeah, see that's what I'm saying. Right now, I cannot execute any of these codes because I don't have any file in my backend. Okay, yeah. Hmm. There is no file in my backend, and this compiler might not be able to handle these kind of problems. So now after this, there will be our binary files also. Okay, there will be our binary files. So binary files are actually for images, PDF, or any non-text data that use binary mode, which is 0 and 1 mode. Okay, no encoding or decoding is actually applied in that binary mode. So everything is same in that binary, okay, just like we are using in our TXT files. Okay, then see there are some more type of files. There are CSV files and there are JSON files. Okay, for our CSV files, those are comma separated value files. Okay, and both both of these files, JSON files are actually Java JavaScript. Its full form is like that, JavaScript also. So both of these are built directly on what we have just learned here. So since they still use open, okay, open under the hood, okay, so these are also, if we have understood the file handling right here correctly, that we can now actually do it right here. So see, this one, this one exception right here, this one exception is also the file not found exception. We have actually, basically have to keep it in mind, okay. Now after this exception, let's just understand that how can we actually, what are modules and what can we actually do with those modules, okay. So for that module part, I'll be covering that part in our next lecture, okay, so that there will be no hotspot in this video. So Till then, guys, take care and keep problem solving. Take care. Tata, goodbye, and see you.